Game development is the ultimate self-improvement hack. Therapy is expensive, but game dev, it's free and it teaches you more than you'd expect.
Because when you make games, you'll face failure, you'll face imposter syndrome and constant self-doubt. Some days it feels like nothing works, and maybe you don't either.
And yet, you keep showing up, you keep building, and without even realizing it, you start to change, not just as a developer, but as a person.
Because game development requires you. And in this video, I'll show you exactly what I mean by that. Discipline over dopamine.
Game development forces you to think long term. You can't just click a button and feel rewarded. You need to sit down, focus and build.
Unlike social media, where you get instant hits of likes and comments, game dev doesn't reward you instantly. Most of the time, you're staring at broken code, bugs, and placeholder art that looks nothing like the vision in your head.
Instead of chasing quick dopamine hits, you start to train your brain to stick to the slow grind, and over time, you start to crave progress, not just pings and notifications.
It's the same discipline behind every big achievement. Saving money, getting fit, learning a skill. You don't get results instantly, but if you keep showing up day after day, the results compound.
And here's the difference. Social media posts, but especially school assignments, they have a finish line. You hand it in, you upload it, and you're done.
Game development doesn't work like that. There's no teacher waiting to grade it, and there's no audience waiting to like it. The only person keeping you accountable most of the time is you.
At first, that's brutal. But it also forces you to build discipline in the purest form, showing up without external reward.
You start small, maybe 30 minutes a day, then an hour, then 2.
And before you know it, the thing you have to push yourself to do becomes the thing that you can't imagine skipping.
You learn to love failing.
In game development, failure isn't an occasional guest. It's the default. Some days it feels like you're hitting like 100 errors per hour, there's constant bugs and just a ton of red text in the console.
At first, that might feel like proof you're not good enough, but eventually it just becomes normal.
You stop seeing failure as a dead end and you start seeing it more like a checkpoint. Every crash, every broken build, it's feedback, it's data.
You don't just debug your game, you also debug yourself. You learn to slow down, to stay patient, and to actually think through why something isn't working instead of rage coding your way forward.
But one of the biggest shifts is that your ego takes a back seat.
You can't pretend you're the smartest person in a room when a missing semicolon just broke your entire game.
And sometimes it's not just an easy fix. Sometimes it can take days, even weeks, or a month to fix that single problem that refuses to die. That's why it feels amazing when you try to fix an error for like 2 hours and you see a different one. At least it means you move.
And you realize the easiest solution isn't brute force. It's sleeping on it, taking a break, letting your brain breathe so it can actually solve the problem for you. It sounds ridiculous, but that tiny shift, it's progress, and progress compounds.
Game dev teaches you something humbling. You're not as good as you think. And that's a good thing.
Because growth hardly ever comes from being right all the time. It comes from being wrong over and over until you finally figure it out. And over time, your brain rewires. You stop saying this is broken, you start saying how do I fix this? In your code, in your projects, even in life.
Every crash is feedback, every failure is a lesson, and after some time, you stop fearing it.
Structure becomes survival.
At some point, you realize game development isn't just about building systems in the game, it's also about building systems in your life.
The same way you code mechanics to work together, like inventory, crafting, combat, you start designing habits to work together. Wake up, do your morning routine, open your project. Not because you feel like it, but because it's the system now.
And the truth is, without structure, and if you're a solo dev, it will all fall apart.
There's no boss watching the clock and there's no teacher checking your homework. If you don't create your own framework, you drift. Hours disappear and even weeks can disappear. Suddenly, you realize the game you promised yourself you'd finish is still just an idea in your head.
So you learn very soon, structure isn't optional.
Especially if you're balancing school or a job. The hours aren't handed to you. You have to use your extra time. Saturday afternoons, late evenings, or an hour before class. You learn to protect those little windows of time like treasure.
And then there's scope creep. That endless list of things you could add. New weapons, better AI, multiplayer, or another biome. You learn very quickly that If you try to do everything, you finish nothing.
So you prioritize, you cut things you love, and you put some dreams on the shelf, maybe forever. Because the greatest system you learn isn't how to add things, it's how to say no.
That discipline keeps both you and your game alive. The same skills you use to finish a project, like planning, focus, and prioritization, they start to bleed into everything else.
Your day, your goals, even your relationships. Structure stops being a cage and becomes the thing that gives you freedom. You build more than a game.
One of the biggest things game dev gives you is self-trust. Every line of code and every system you finish, that's proof that you can rely on yourself to follow through.
At first, you don't know if you can. You second guess everything. But every time you push through a challenge, you quietly add another brick to that foundation of trust. And one day, you look back and realize you've built something that exists because you didn't quit.
And the truth is, you never know everything when you start. Most of the time, you're moving forward with imperfect knowledge. You're testing, pivoting, and patching things as you go.
It's less about knowing the right answer and more about trusting yourself to figure it out along the way.
Like when you decide to add multiplayer for the first time. You don't know the perfect networking model or what variables you should be syncing or not.
But you start anyway. Break things, rebuild them, watch tutorials, and ask questions. A month later, you've got players moving around together on the same screen. Not because you knew from the start, but because you were willing to learn while building.
That's also how you build resilience against imposter syndrome. You realize progress doesn't just come from certainty.
It comes from iteration, from trying, failing, and moving anyway. Game dev teaches you that being unsure isn't a weakness.
And maybe the most underrated skill you learn is finishing. Not just starting projects or experimenting all the time, but to actually push them across the finish line.
Every finished game, no matter how small, becomes proof in your portfolio that you're someone who gets things done. And that proof compounds. One project turns into two into three, and suddenly you don't just say you're a game developer, you have a trail of projects that show it.
And finishing things changes how you see yourself. You start to believe in your ability to create something from nothing, to take a blank Unity scene and turn it into a world people can play in.
That belief is powerful, because once you've done it once, you know you can do it again, and again, and again.
And that confidence, it starts to leak into other areas of your life. If you can build a game from scratch, you start to believe you can build anything.
You don't level up alone.
And even though game dev can feel like a solo grind for us solo devs, it secretly teaches you how to work with others.
You post builds online, you get feedback, sometimes harsh, sometimes encouraging. You learn how to listen without letting your ego break, how to filter the noise and take the signal that actually makes your project better.
Because the truth is, you can't really build anything meaningful in isolation. Even if you're a solo dev, your game becomes a collaboration with testers, with players, and your community.
The best version of you is a creator.
Consumption is passive. Scrolling, watching, binging, it doesn't change you. But creation, it transforms you.
Because every pixel, every mechanic, every menu in your game is a decision you made. You're not just taking something in, you're putting something out.
And those decisions shape you. Slowly, they turn you into someone who solves problems instead of scrolling past them.
That shift changes the way you experience everything. Watching a movie, you start noticing how the pacing is designed. Playing a game, you can't help but study the mechanics under the hood. Even walking outside, you start seeing systems and possibilities instead of just scenery.
Once you become a creator, the world stops being something that happens to you. Instead, it becomes raw material, clay in your hands. And the more you shape that clay, the more your brain changes with it. Creation isn't just an outlet, it's also training.
Every challenge you face while building a game turns your brain into a problem-solving machine. You stop freezing when things go wrong. Instead, you naturally break problems down, piece by piece, until they make sense.
And well, here's the contrast. Pure consumption, when it's not tied to learning, does the exact opposite. It weakens your brain. It trains your brain to chase the next dopamine hit instead of solving what's right in front of you.
The more you consume, the more you drift away. The more you create, the sharper your mind gets. Suddenly, everything is fuel. Every story, every mechanic, every half-baked idea is something you could build.
You're building the kind of person who can finish one.
And you don't have to be a dev.
And the best part is, you don't have to be a game developer to get all these benefits. The transformation comes from creating.
Make videos, write stories, draw. Build something with your hands. Every creative pursuit forces you into the same habits: resilience, patience, iteration, and problem solving.
Think about it. A writer doesn't know every plot twist before they start. They put words on a page, cross them out, rewrite, and rediscover the story as they go. Basically still debugging, but in a different language.
An artist doesn't nail a painting in one stroke. They layer, they adjust, and they step back and rethink.
Even building furniture or gardening or making music, it's the same loop. You face problems, you experiment, and you improve. And over time, you create a version of yourself that's stronger, more focused, and more confident.
The medium doesn't matter. What matters is that you're not just consuming. You're shaping, iterating, and leaving behind proof that you can do it. Purpose in the process.
And as a bonus, maybe the most underrated part of game dev is the purpose it gives you. Having something to work on, something that is bigger than a single day. It gives you direction.
Even on the rough days, you know exactly what you're working toward. You're not just drifting, you're building. You're making progress towards something that matters to you.
That meaning is fuel. It carries you through the failures, the doubt, and the grind. Because you're creating something that wouldn't exist without you. You don't just build things, you build yourself.
Because when you build projects, you're also building patience, discipline, confidence, and the kind of person who actually finish things.
That's why I believe game dev is the ultimate self-improvement hack. And if you're on this journey too, you might relate to how I felt in this video.